To sum up the subject analysis lesson for this week, I just want to touch on a few things that you should remember about assigning subject headings. Number one, you should keep the primary topic of your book in mind. I know I've said this several times throughout the course, but the first subject heading reflects the primary topic, and this in turn affects the classification number applied to an item. But the reason this is really important is because it makes your collection browsable for your users. All the books with the same primary topic are brought together. For example, all of these books that you're looking at here are about subject headings and assigning them, and so they all have call numbers that reflect that, and so they're brought together on the shelf, which makes it easy for your users to browse them and find a lot of books on the topic that they are interested in. It's also important to keep your user in mind. If you're original cataloging, assign headings that you think that your users will use. If you're copy cataloging, you don't have to stick with the same headings that the Library of Congress used if you're working with a Library of Congress record. You don't have to keep them in the same order. You can change them around if you think that your users will look for this book in a different way. For example, here is a book called The Professor and the Madman, A Tale of Murder, Insanity, and the Making of the Oxford English Dictionary. And so it covers the history of the Oxford English Dictionary, but it's also kind of a biography of James Murray, the editor of the Oxford English Dictionary. And here's the record that the Library of Congress created for this item. And as you can see, the first subject heading, what they feel is the primary topic, is a title heading, and it's for the Oxford English Dictionary. Now, some libraries might choose to accept that. Here's an example of a library that I found that changed around the order of the subject headings. They really felt that their users would be looking for this book in the biography section. They would consider it to be a biography of James Murray. So as you can see on the left-hand side, they've put the personal name heading for James Murray as the first heading, and they have chose to classify this with their biographies. It will be shelved within their biography section. So definitely keep your users in mind and assign subject headings that you think will be useful to them and will result in call numbers that are useful to them. The last thing is keep your collection in mind. Just because the Library of Congress does things one way, it doesn't mean you have to do that in your own library. And really, both of the things that I talked about before, keeping the primary topic in mind and keeping your users in mind, are a way of keeping your collection in mind. Make sure that your items fit within your broader collection, both in terms of how they'll be classed together on the shelf and just in general how you think your users will use them. So you don't have to follow Library of Congress practices necessarily. Stick with local practices that you feel will be useful in your own library.